I have actually two parts of my lecture, and one part is talking about the United Nations Sustainability Goals, and the first part is talking about artificial intelligence goals. So, by the way, if you make a quick photograph, you'll find a link to the talk concepts here. That's that second to last line, DL964, and I'll put it out on social media, Twitter and LinkedIn, the link with a hashtag for the conference, which is probably WUD Silesia, I'm guessing, but we'll get there. Okay, so here's my good friend, Elon, and he talks about artificial intelligence. And here's really a dramatic statement. Mark my words, artificial intelligence is far more dangerous than nuclear weapons. When I was young, we marched against nuclear weapons and things like that. We were really quite afraid of what might happen. Now the new threat is apparently some kind of misuse of artificial intelligence. He talks about the need for a regulatory body overseeing the development of superintelligence. So I have some friends in IBM Japan who introduced me to work they're doing internationally with mainly American universities, MIT, Stanford, USC, UCLA, to try to make some standards so that we can regulate artificial intelligence. And they showed me a paper from 2016 to the Obama White House, and that's this fellow here. And in the paper, they have the center of their ideas, which are a set of what they call principles, but in fact, these are quality attributes of an artificial intelligence system. For example, how transparent is the decision making? Do we know why it made the decision to shoot you? Or something like that. And the idea is we can use these dimensions of quality, controllability, security, safety, privacy, ethics, to understand artificial intelligence systems and to make sure they're not unethical, non-private, insecure, and non-transparent. That's the basic idea. I took one look at this, and you're looking at it now, and I saw something that disturbed me. See this sentence here about transparency, ensuring the abilities to explain and verify the behavior of the AI network system. Well, that sounds nice, right? This is what is commonly called management bullshit. Unfortunately, it's being done at an academic level. You'd think they'd know better. And it's going to the White House, and we're trying to regulate their whole dangerous nuclear, more dangerous than nuclear future of artificial intelligence, perhaps weapons and other systems. So I'm a bit disturbed that these are nice-sounding phrases, but they are not precise, they are not clear, and 1,000 different people would interpret these in 1,000 different ways. So we can't even work together and have common purpose and understanding of what we're doing. So I said, okay, one thing I like to do is take management bullshit and try to make it clearer. So even if it's wrong, at least we agree on the same thing and don't have multiple interpretations. So here is an example using my planning language of how to formulate, in this case, the AI accountability with here's the bullshit level, also called ambition level, to be polite to the managers. And then here is a scale of measure, which is quite simply saying, instead of just saying very fast, let's talk about kilometers per hour, just putting a scale on it. But this makes the idea clearer, and it makes it possible when we talk about enhanced or improved, we can put a number on that and get much more precise. So here we're putting a number on the long-term overall wish to get to a number 90, the goal level. We did a 2-hour workshop yesterday learning this kind of structure, way of translating the management bullshit you will all find in the PowerPoint slides by your management for your projects or your customers. What I encourage people to do is to confront the bullshit and say, this is not good enough, we might misunderstand, we might waste your time, we might fail in the project. Let us take an hour and clarify and agree to exactly what we mean. So I've done this for all of the artificial intelligence goals. Here's a little bit more detail on that scale of measure. Not that I expect anybody to absorb this during my talk. I'll give you references. You can read more about it. But here is the scale of measure with a lot of parameters like accountability, strength, and here is a decoding, if you like, of these different dimensions. So this is modeling a very complex system, all the artificial intelligence systems in the world. And these are different parameters and different subparameters describing the system. But this allows us to be far more precise and more selective, looking at, for example, the most dangerous artificial intelligence systems we need to deal with early. For example, drones flying about in the Middle East shooting at people might be or even a Tesla car trying to drive itself might be other examples. Once we have quantified, here symbolically are the quantification of those 10 attributes of artificial intelligence systems. The status is the here and now, and the wish level is that future. So we have numbers to express those ideas. And here is the impact estimation table that Paweł referred to in his talk, where here is the perfect technology, which scores 100% of meeting all the artificial intelligence goals. Here is some other artificial intelligence technology. There's actually from UC Berkeley and UCLA. They all have their Charles River. They all have their artificial intelligence systems. We can now put these up as potential good ideas or solutions, thus the light bulb, and we can rate them how good they are at satisfying our needs, our demands, or whatever, for example, an artificial intelligence regulatory body would demand of them. And we can see, in a sense, the ratings here and compare them to one another and may make a decision. This one is not good enough at all. These are good enough, but this one is the best, and ideas like that. So once we have quantified what we want, we can, in multiple critical dimensions, we can also then evaluate any artificial intelligence system and decide whether to approve it or to change it or to choose it or whatever we want to do. So in summary, for the first part, I think that the academic community, which is also working on standards now for artificial intelligence, they need to clarify what they're doing. They need to quantify what they're doing. And some of the people I'm working with, the IBM Japan group, agrees on that principle and has brought these ideas to the standardization bodies. So I find it amazing that academic people need to be told, this is bullshit, you need to be numeric. But in fact, they do need to be taught that. It's kind of scary that the people are going to save us from artificial intelligence destruction don't have clear thinking yet. But I'm doing my part. And whenever you encounter a lack of clarity, maybe you'll do your part, challenge it, say, thank you for your bullshit. But, oh, sorry, thank you for your ambition level. Let's get together and clarify and quantify it. So you want more details for how to quantify everything, there is a link here to the quantification of all the artificial intelligence goals if you wish to study that. So, part two. Again, when Paweł came and visited me at my summer cabin in Norway overlooking the Oslo fjord, it took me several years to get him to stop working, relax a little bit, and come up and enjoy life. I simply said, actually, I have a few weeks and I could write a book. You got any good ideas? And he said, yes. And he handed me the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, which have become amazingly popular and widespread wherever you go today. I had a meeting with the CEO of a British electrical company, and he handed me his annual report, and there are the United Nations goals as a framework for the electricity company. On 7th of November, we had a conference in Oslo on artificial intelligence, and the Minister for Digitalization, Mr. Astrup, had a little metal badge. And he said, this is the United Nations Sustainability Goals, and the minister then proceeded to quote about the first 8 goals. Okay, so in business, politics, wherever you turn, these are being adopted as a framework. But the problem is, the goals are easy to love. You know, what's not to love about no poverty? But the question is, this means different things to different people. And for example, what is poverty? And most people think immediately of economic poverty, but you could have health care poverty or educational poverty, and that could be part of the picture. And you need to define poverty a lot better. You even have to define no. It seems very simple, like zero, none. But what about moving down from this big just to this big within 1 year? That's not no poverty, but it's certainly a great achievement. So in other words, these high-level slogans are okay to inspire people, to motivate people, to get people to nod. But the danger is that with such unclear slogans, we work as a human groups all over the planet, and it takes 100 years to achieve the 2030 goals of the United Nations. I believe if we clarified the goals much better, focused much better, we might achieve these goals in a much shorter time. Let us say 30 years rather than 100 years. So we're working towards them. We're all well-intended, but we're not very precise. So we're going to have a lot of failed projects, failed investments, wasted time, while we're figuring out what was even intended by the goals. So my theory here is, again, exactly same as the artificial intelligence. This saving the planet is so important that we must use the best methods for thinking about it and planning it and sharing our ideas that we can find. And that means everybody has to have extreme clarity, extreme unambiguousness. It has to be numeric so we can track and trace the gradual change from the here and now to the future. It can't just be nice sounding words. So I starting to write my little book, which I'm going to give you a copy of digitally. I started with the first goal and used most of the book to examine it in great detail and show how it could be improved. Now, United Nations is not unconscious of the fact that no poverty is a little bit too simple. So here is some of the official text trying to explain it, trying to divide it, trying even to quantify it. But to make a long story short, it's still a lot of nice, more bullshit words. And even some of the measures are just measures that happen to be there in the UN statistics rather than relevant measures. So they're actually not very good measures. And there are several academics who are also criticizing the goals as not good enough, not clear enough. I'm not the only one doing that. Here, again, using my planning language is a simple draft for the no poverty goal. There's a scale of measure, and there's the here and now, and there's how good we want to be. So this is a quantified, structured idea, but even this is too simple for such a complex problem. Now, here's part of the United Nations breakdown. We're going to take a slightly deeper look at this 1.5, which is one of about a total of about 7 decomposed ideas of poverty. Here's a little bit more detail. One thing I've done here is I've taken the sentence and I've put in bold ideas like build resilience. That sounds nice, but what is resilience and what are we building? Of the poor, who are the poor? In vulnerable situations, what is a situation and what is a vulnerable situation? Notice ambiguity all over the place in the official goal. So it's anybody's guess what this really means. But I take these ideas and I use that to systematically build a scale of measure. Here's the resilience idea, for example, right here. And I've taken and decomposed the resilience idea. Again, just a draft, but avoiding, escaping, resisting, recovering, so that I'm beginning to define these terms and trying to find critical and useful meanings of them. So this is what I call structuring a scale of measure so that you can model very complex systems, infinitely complex systems like poverty in the world. So here's what we've done. We've structured the scale, so we have the different variables or parameters, and we've defined the interesting set of these parameters that we have to consider. We can now pick any set of these that is especially critical, especially short-term. Imagine people who will starve to death within this year, if you don't do something, would have more priority than people who would not starve to death within the year. We need to, in a sense, be agile and select high priority critical things and do them early so they get done before people starve to death, and then look at lower priority, longer term things. And these parameters help us select those things we should pay attention to and do them in an agile way. So here is just here's the 1.5. Here we are actually using here is the now, and here is the future, and here are all the parameters to describe exactly what we're talking about, not just disaster protection from poverty in general. Okay, so here's the larger picture with a long-term status, a long-term goal, and some short-term status and short-term goals, which are all along this continuum of where we are in the here and now and places we want to be in the future. So I'm done with my main message, and here you could take a photograph of this if you want to. If you have the slides, you can get it. But this is my free book on sustainability planning, and I would really like it if you would spread this book. It's absolutely free. I'd like to get it in the hands of anybody planning any good charity or cause. And I'd like to change the way United Nations does its own planning. I think they are not good enough at planning. They're too bureaucratic, too much management bullshit. And what they're dealing with is too serious to deal with bullshit and not have clear ideas. So we need to spread the ideas. So spread the book, spread the ideas. If you need any help practicing it for a good cause, I probably am soft-hearted and would like to help you. So just ask. Now, if you have quantified your goals, you can suddenly do something that was referred to earlier. You can take, here's a tactic, something about flood damage control, flood temperature or something like that. Here are two different strategies or ideas for making the world a better place. Here is one of our goals, the disaster protection goal. We want to move from 50 on some scale of measure to 60 within some time limit. And this particular strategy is now rated at 50%. It means it will do half the job. It'll get us halfway from the here and now to our future. Well, that's good. Much better than zero, much better than going backwards, which we seem to be doing, but it's not good enough. We have this little gap to fulfill to get the other half of the way. So we have a second strategy or tactic, which also happens to give about 50% if it were implemented first. And we can dream and say, I wonder if I did this and this, if I'd get 50 plus 50, and in other words, I'd reach my goal, 100%. It's not an easy question because adding things just doesn't simply add up. They can be synergetic, they can more than add up, they can be thrashing, they can destroy each other, and you don't really know until you put them together or unless you have some experience of doing them. Here's a second, and by the way, you have to evaluate not just one goal, but maybe 10 goals or 20 goals at the same time. Concurrent, multi-dimensional engineering is necessary because you have to consider all of the goals. So you can't let one goal like ending poverty destroy the other goals like education, to take a simple example, okay? So you have to watch out for side effects. So we normally have an impact estimation table model with about 10 values or qualities. There are 18 United Nations Sustainability Development Goal areas. But it's also important to look at the costs, and often short-term costs, money costs, time costs, people costs, and say, okay, this strategy was 50% effective, but it in fact consumes, what's the number here? It's 85% or something like that. It consumes most of our budget, okay? It could be a budget of time to deadline or a budget of capital expenditure. But now the problem is that I've eaten so much of my budget, I have just this left, that maybe doing the extra stuff needed to get me to 100% would cost more than I can afford. We got a bit lucky here. The second one only cost 13%, so I'm still probably within budget. I can do this and this. They're consistent with my resources. And with a bit of luck, this plus this will get me mainly to my goal. Notice we can use logic about design. You know, the logic is this does satisfy our goal to an interesting extent, but not enough. I need other or different things. This might be a candidate. This is very expensive. Maybe I should start doing this one, which has a high cost effectiveness or efficiency, a high value for money. And if I get, and then maybe look at the more expensive ones. So this is a way of prioritizing. In fact, we use spreadsheets and we automatically say, calculate the value to cost ratio. That's down here. And this is in fact a kind of product owner idea, Peter. Product owner I had breakfast with this morning. And you know, you should, if this has a value to cost ratio, which is about, how much is it? It's about 7 times better than the cost to value ratio here. We should be choosing to do those things that cost the least and give the most. That would be smart or intelligent product owner sequencing. And we need to not only sequence, but we need to do things early, not have a 5-year project that's 3 years delayed and then fails, which is very many such projects. They're called Big Bang Waterfall, and they should be obsolete, but they're not. We need to do things constantly, week by week, month by month, and measurably increment our way towards our goals. And when we get signals that the strategies are not working, we should be agile and analyze it and change things and get back on track and keep on going. There's not enough of this agile, incremental feedback and change mechanisms going on. So we also, just without going into too much detail, whenever we make estimates like this, we ask for the evidence, the source of the evidence, the plus-minus uncertainty, we rate the credibility. So this is all handling the risk of bad estimates. There's a lot of unknowns. We're often going into territory of new technology or the idea of eradicating polio from the world for the first time, that kind of thing. And so we don't have a lot of good data sometimes, but we have some data, some experiments, some pilots. And it's important that whenever we use numbers like that to argue our case or analyze our case, that we have simultaneously captured data on how good is the evidence and how good is the source and what is the range of uncertainty. And we do that in this modeling technique, which is a free technique anybody can use. Okay, so let me skip here. So summarizing the whole talk, number one, I like to put it this way: no blah, blah, blah. It's a polite way of saying no management bullshit. Don't allow it on your watch. Confront it, challenge it, but constructively. Say, do you mind if I come back and draft a much clearer version, maybe with a scale of measure, maybe with some numbers, and we can talk about it and see if you agree. It will help you get what you want. There are all kinds of positive ways of confronting the bullshit. Important ideas, like no poverty, need great clarity. So anything that's critical, like the poverty, like the education, we need to always have a culture that says, let us clarify and quantify the critical values. And anything less, you are not taking it seriously, and you are threatening the poor, and you're threatening the undereducated, and you're threatening people with diseases. And that's not nice. The third idea is that any strategy you have it must actually deliver the value or improvement, the movement from here and now to the future that you have planned, or it must be changed, and it must be changed early and rapidly before it gets out of hand, before you've invested $50 billion in 10 years and find it doesn't work. Okay, so you have to keep on trying to do things early, measure things early, and change bad things early. Here are some links again to various books, and some of them we're selling for a modest fee on the website, but if anybody says, I can't afford it, but I want your book, and you send me an email, I'll probably send you a free copy. I just want to get the information out there. So now, maybe we haven't convinced everybody here that they should save the human race and join the sustainability movement. So maybe everybody isn't feeling like me and Greta, pretty angry. Trump certainly isn't on board with that yet. I just got an email last night about midnight with the two of them, and it had a funny little text on it. So the text said, there's a child here who a childish person who doesn't understand science at all, and that person should not have a platform to speak. The other one is called Greta Thunberg. So, by the way, these methods are not just good for saving the planet or saving us from artificial intelligence, but they can be used in your usability and UX projects. And here are two references to the lectures I've held in the 2 previous years, which, if you're not ready to save the planet, maybe you just want to do better UX work. And so you can maybe review these things.